Hello everyone, this is POW Ponder on Weather. In this update, we're going to be talking about very active severe weather setups over the coming days, along with a major snowstorm. Welcome back everyone. I appreciate all my followers out there and the new followers. I would love to reach 100,000 subscribers. So if you hadn't subscribed already, it's free to do so. All you have to do is hit the subscribe button. You can ring the notification bell and get notified with my daily updates. We've got a lot of severe weather to talk about, so it's important to share this video with your friends and family that are going to be impacted from these areas. So let's kind of fine tune this and delve into the details. This morning, we've got the overall setup. We've got some rain coming into the Dallas-Fort Worth area. That's going to be our prime target of our initial setup for our severe weather. It's actually raining out. I'm in Dallas myself. It's actually raining outside my window right now, but we've got the Arctic air to the north, and that's going to stay up there for the next several days, but that's finally going to be on the move as we head towards New Year's Eve. So let's zoom into that risk area for today, because they actually enhanced it. We talked about this yesterday. This northern area of Mississippi and Alabama that could enhance this risk and expand it, which they did. So now we're looking at severe weather. So you can see Dallas, those storms aren't severe this morning in Dallas, but once they reach more or less East Texas, and especially as they get into Arkansas, things could start to get pretty ugly as we get towards the 2 to 3 o'clock time frame. So we could have some severe weather breaking out really anywhere from Shreveport, and that extends all the way to Charlotte. So this is a fairly widespread event as this continues to shift off, and then they kind of have a bullseye more or less into Arkansas, going to northern Mississippi, northern Alabama, getting into Tennessee, and this risk just kind of expanded further northward as we kind of fine-tune this. And then more of an enhanced risk now for our northern areas of Mississippi and Alabama, getting into parts of Tennessee, and all three modes of severe weather are definitely on the table. And let's kind of zoom into the parameter for tornadoes. And this is a 10% risk area within this bullseye where they did upgrade to that enhanced risk for severe weather. But don't let your guard down if you're even in the 2% range, because there's been plenty of times we've had a tornado within that sector. So this just talks about the probability of actually probably seeing one, but there's going to be a lot of rotation within this atmosphere that's got a very warm sector to be tapping into, and things could start to kind of break it out, because things they're going to be more or less isolated, discrete kind of bubblers, renegade supercells, and that's what makes this kind of more severe and then tornadic, because they're not going to be like, it's not a squall line type of event, and they're just going to be kind of popping up like popcorn and then moving across off to the east. So let's expand the view and talk about what's happening to the rest of the country for today, because we've got these dynamic systems that come off the west coast, bringing some welcome rain into California. And some of this is going to be really heavy as this powerful jet stream starts to come ashore. Look at that very heavy rain setting up over Southern California, and some of those areas could pick up multi-inches of rain. There's the snow well to the north in our northwestern areas, and then we're watching this Arctic front kind of dive down, but it's going to take its sweet time to get here. We're going to remain in the warm sector for the next several days, and that's going to set the stage for multiple rounds of severe weather. So let's kind of fine tune this. Let's take a look at the overall tornado parameter index for this afternoon as we get into the about 3 o'clock time frame. I think that's when things starts to get really active. Yesterday we were talking 3s and 4s. Now this is upgraded to some 5s, 6s, and 7s, right? So it's getting a little bit more probability of probably seeing some tornadoes start to break out into portions of Louisiana, into Mississippi, going into Alabama, and this just continues to shift as we get later into the evening hours into the Tennessee, and then expands into Georgia, into the overnight hours. We're talking past midnight, right? So this is a fairly widespread and a long duration event, because we have these little isolated bubblers. This is the latest HRRR model, and by the time we get into that 3-4 o'clock time frame, there's just isolated discrete pop supercells starting to break out into Arkansas, Mississippi, going into Tennessee, northern portions of Alabama here, and moving off into the rest of Tennessee. And as we continue to shift, this is around midnight, so this is kind of more of a longer duration event. It's not a squall line. So this is what makes this a little bit more severe, because these are going to be just more or less isolated discrete supercells. And you can see these little popcorn variety popping up still into Mississippi and Alabama and to Tennessee, because you're going to remain in the warm sector. And then we move on to like 3-4 o'clock in the morning, right? This just continues kind of all night long as it pushes off to the east. Now we're talking, places into Birmingham, central Alabama, going into northern parts of Georgia here. And then this will just expand and eventually go into the Carolinas as we go into Thursday, because this is already Thursday technically at 4 o'clock in the morning. And as this shifts, that's the shift of the severe weather. So right now, the Storm Prediction Center has that marginal risk for severe weather shifting all the way to New Orleans, all the way into the Carolinas, further into central Alabama, going into central Georgia, going up pretty much all of South Carolina and North Carolina, as that same system will continue to push further off and eventually get off the coast. But the rest of the country for that Thursday time frame, you're talking December 30th here, we have yet another dynamic system that's going to be really building, and this may actually be more intense than what we may experience this afternoon into the overnight hours with our Southeast Dixie Alley event. So we have to be definitely concerned with that system, because this is going to be another significant, powerful setup that's going to be really diving into off the West Coast, bringing some more heavy rain for them. Your snow to the north. There's the cold air. Still, again, more or less locked up into our northern states. There's the warm front. Where this stalls, that's the separation of the warm and some of the more superior air mass. And that's the concern with this stationary front. It really kind of doesn't go anywhere. Do you remain in the warm sector even after this initial severe weather event? And look at the jet stream. This thing is cranking, guys. I mean, 191 knots. That's over 200 miles an hour. So this is a very intense jet stream coming off the coast of California and racing across. So you can see the dynamics that we're working with. And as it pulls and gets into that warm sector, that's going to set the stage for another round of severe weather that's going to be breaking out later into the day on New Year's Eve, and then New Year's Day, and then the 2nd of January. So that's going to be a multi-state event as this traverses across and moves across from west to east. So we're going to go over all this. Look at the vorticity index by the time we get into that New Year's Eve, right? It's New Year's Eve. It's big plans, big night. A lot of people are out celebrating. So you need to be weather aware, because that's a big transition day for a good chunk of the country. You've got this very powerful dynamic system. I showed you the jet stream, right? I mean, we got a powerful low pressure system off the coast of California that's going to be racing across. And as we move through, this is the rest of the country, what they're going to be dealing with. There's that stationary front, right? There's the boundary kind of waiting for that low level jet to tap into the system. To the north, we've got our snow, right? The snow, there's the Arctic air finally on the move, breaking out with snow in Nebraska into portions of Iowa. So you got the cold sector to the north, the warm sector to the south, and that's where they're going to be spelling all the severe weather threat. So let's fine tune this as we get into that New Year's Eve, high temperatures. Yeah, we're talking below zero for highs in much of the Dakotas and Minnesota. 20s starting to creep into Nebraska, into Iowa. That's where this transition to be into snow. I think snow breaks out in Colorado, and then even in Denver starts to get in the action with some snow. I'm expecting several inches of snow in Denver from this particular event. But yeah, as you get into that New Year's Eve, there's your high temperature. Still plenty warm in the warm sector, waiting for our next severe weather setup, which is going to take place as we get into that New Year's Eve time frame. So here's the northern sector. Snow is going to be breaking out into Colorado, going into Nebraska, going into Kansas. As these isobars really start to tighten up, we start to get what they call convective banding. Some of these snowfall rates could be 1 to 2 inches per hour, guys. So we're talking some heavier snows at times as this really traverses across and really starts to get its act together. I think the initial setup kind of starts somewhere around the Dallas-Fort Worth area with some stronger storms that some of those could turn severe, because look at the latest update from the Storm Prediction Center. We have a marginal risk more or less in from Abilene, from Dallas. So I think that's the initiation of these stronger storms. And then once they tap into that warm sector of the Gulf of Mexico, then that's when they start a little bit more severe. So that's why they have a slight risk for severe weather, getting into far northeast Texas, getting back into Little Rock, Arkansas, going into Memphis, going into Jackson, Nashville, getting into portions of Kentucky. That'll be on the day. That's on New Year's Eve, right? This is New Year's Eve. So this is another system that's going to be coming across. So as we expand the view, that snow to the north just really starts to get cranking. There's our major snowstorm really breaking out into portions of Kansas and Nebraska here, getting into our northern areas of Missouri, all of Iowa, and then back into Chicago where they broke the snow streak yesterday. We're going to be adding to those totals in a big way, and then the southern branch of Wisconsin as well. So this would be New Year's Day. This is around noontime on New Year's Day, getting into portions of Wisconsin by then, into southern portions of Michigan. And there's the warm sector on the south side. Some very heavy rain. There's a lot of intense water vapor with this system, and that's going to spell trouble down the line. There's the setup as we go on to day 4 for actually New Year's Day, as that continues to push off into the southeast. So right now we have a slight risk, but I do feel this is going to be expanding as we get closer, because this looks to be a little bit more significant than what you're going to be dealing with tonight in these same areas, from Shreveport to Little Rock, to get into Jackson, going into Birmingham again. This one looks to be a little bit further north as well, going into Tennessee, going into Kentucky. And I think this one just expands further east and further north as time gets a little bit more fine-tuned as this particular event gets closer. But there's the snow. There's the northern branch with that heavier snow continuing to break out as we get into the overnight hours on that New Year's Day time frame, going to that second January 2nd time frame, with some very heavy snow breaking out into our northern snow line there. And then this would continue to race across. I mean, I showed you the jet stream. So these are a very fast moving dynamic system. Then, but yeah, as we get into that January 2nd time frame, on that Sunday afternoon, it's already in PA, it's already in upstate New York, and this will just continue to race across further off to the east. So most of this would probably be on the strong to possibly marginal, at least marginal at times, severe side, even into the Carolinas by the time we get into that second time frame. But there's the cold air on Sunday. Everybody starts to get into the action as it continues to push and drain further south. We're talking those below zero temperatures in Minnesota. This is picking up on probably the snowfall and the snowpack that you're going to be dealt with over portions of Iowa, with negative temperatures for low temperatures, get into single digits in Illinois. So there's the snow, there's the colder air continue to drain, with some single digits popping up into portions of northern Missouri where they're going to get that snow. The demarcation line is right around St. Louis. So it's questionable right now with the different models if St. Louis is going to get into the action or not. But right now we're taking it out of St. Louis. Is going to be just to the north. So it could shift. If it shifts another 50 miles, then St. Louis is in the action. So as we get into, Oklahoma areas, we're talking teens, 20s as we get into the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So that is a major change from the 80s that you've been seeing lately, with 60s and 70-degree temperatures for low temperatures. So 25 is going to be a major shock to the body, and that's just actual temperatures, not even the feels like is going to be more or less into the teens in North Texas, even low teens as you wake up on Sunday. But there's the precipitation as it continues to move across. By the time it actually gets cold enough into the Northeast, the precipitation has already moved offshore. So there's the temperatures as we get into that third time frame, with plenty freezing temperatures by then in the Northeast. But the precipitation will be gone by then, as the rest of the country still modifies the Arctic air, but still pushes it further south. Now we're talking Houston gets a freeze, places even in the southern Louisiana, going all the way to the coastline, even in the Florida Panhandle, could actually start to get a freeze by the time we get into that Monday, that third time frame. But let's take a look at the snow line, because this is going to be a very sharp snow line going to be setting up over this active snow band. So this out here off to the west, we're still going to be getting snow out here into our northwest, but there's the active setup going to be impacting portions of Denver, and then it really starts to get cranking into portions of southern Nebraska, going into Kansas, and there's going to be a sharp line going into northern Missouri, more into Iowa, going into northern Illinois, southern Wisconsin, going into central Michigan, and racing across into Canada. A lot of the precipitation is missed out for much of the Northeast, because by the time the cold air gets there, the precipitation is gone. There's the blend of the model, still has that band, kind of bullseye. And like I said, the only questionable thing, how far south this actually sinks with this, where there's convective banding. So it's gonna be one of those situations where if you're south of there, you're not going to get much snow at all. But if you're in that zone, you're going to get easily 4 to 6, some areas 6 to 8, and then some areas 8 to 12 inches with this band that's going to be moving across. There's the precipitation for the rest of the country with that heavier rains off the coast of California. There's the bullseye in Southern California, multi-inch rains as that powerful jet just pumps in that moisture from the Pacific here and dumping it inland. And then there's the heavier rain looking into the Four Corners region. So this is definitely much needed precipitation in this neck of the woods. Unfortunately, once it gets into West Texas and places that are just bone dry, you don't get it into the action. But once it taps into the warm sector, it originates, say, in Dallas, but it really starts to get its act together as you get eastward, going into portions of the southeast, and much of that will be under that severe threat, like we mentioned. So I appreciate you guys watching. Be sure to share this video with your friends and family to get the word out on all these potential setups that are going to be happening over the coming days with this very active system. I'll keep you weather aware on this channel with daily updates. So I appreciate you watching. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you hadn't already, and catch me in the next update where I protect you before and after the storm.